Mr. Amitabh Kant, former CEO of NITI Aayog, and Amitabh Kant, now that you're out of the government system and have a different vantage point of looking at the budget, how do you see this budget? Is it the budget that can actually make a huge announcement as far as our growth trajectory is concerned, especially with the headwinds that we are facing with respect to geopolitical challenges?
Navika, first and foremost, these are very complex times. There's a complete geopolitical fragmentation. There's a breakdown of global supply chains. And I think the FM has done a very fine job of providing great continuity to the Prime Minister's vision of Viksit Bharat. And I would say that first and foremost at this stage, what was essential was to provide fiscal consolidation, because if she'd not brought down, ensured that the fiscal deficit was kept within limits and brought down to 4.3%, and if the GDP, the debt to GDP ratio, which has been brought down to 55.6 from 56.1%, then we would have eventually ended up crowding out private sector rather than crowding in private sector. But despite all this, in the midst of all this fiscal discipline, she is focused on two important areas. One is infrastructure, to take the spend to 12.2 lakh crores, which in effect really means that the capex spend of the central government has gone up to 4.4% of the GDP, which is the highest ever. And secondly, I think the important thing is that she's focused on a clear strategy and a roadmap for manufacturing, which will create jobs in the long run, which is critical. But having said this, I think the master stroke in this budget really is about providing tax exemption. If you look around the tax exemption to the data centers, which will provide computing to India, because worldwide, close to 75% of the total investment that is taking place in data centers, AI, and computing. So if you are able to provide that tax exemption and say that you build computing power in India, then you're really giving a major drive to artificial intelligence, to data centers. You're technologically leapfrogging in a big way. So that, to my mind, is really a great stroke forward. Last point I want to make is that there's a huge focus on areas which have been impacted by Trumpian tariffs. If you look at areas of marine, if you look at areas of the textile, if you look at labor, all these areas have got a big support in this budget. And more than anything else, there's a huge thrust on MSME sector through this 10,000 crore fund for MSME. There's a huge emphasis on TREADS, which will ensure that with TREADS strengthening, linking it up to the GEM and making it providing credit guarantee mechanism, there'll be flow of resources to the MSME in a very big way. So asset-based security lending will take on without collaterals for the MSME. That is a big move forward. And this, to my mind, is a very holistic budget. It provides continuity in the midst of very complex circumstances.
Well, Mr. Amitabh Kant, you are now part of India Inc. May I ask you what is holding India Inc. back from investing more than it has in the past few years, number one? And number two, there has been this charge that has been made on this government that there is tax compliance terrorism that is going on. Do you agree with that charge?
So two things on that, Navika. One is that this budget has focused on reform of FEMA, the non-debt instrument. This budget's about customs reforms, the financial sector priorities, they've reforms. So all these put together, the government clearly realizes that you need to bring in predictability and consistency of policies, which is very critical. There is a challenge on long-term ability, some of which will come out through some
reforms, because when India has been opened up certainly through 8 FTAs to the world markets, and the world markets are seeing India opening up for them, I would have thought that a true reform would be to give us an incredible competitive edge so that our products remain the best in the world, are able to compete. Now you look at agricultural sector where 44% of our active labor force is involved in it. Why are we protecting it? Why are we raising tariffs on something that we believe is going to protect us, is going to make us survive, when exactly the opposite would happen? Remember Coca-Cola and Ambassador cars. We need to open up, make ourselves more competitive. So do you mean reform or do you mean restructuring?
First of all, Anand, to your point, I would say that budget is not the only instrument available. If you look at it in the last 1 year, I mean, the budget talks about from the point as day 3 fifths have been brought, a lot of number of structural reforms being carried out. When I talk about reforms, I'm talking about major structural reforms to make India an integral part of global value chains, making India the least cost producer, not merely doing ease of doing business, but making sure that you become cost competitive in the global economy. And this necessitates you cost competitive in the global economy. And this necessitates you not merely to eliminate vast number of rules, regulations, procedures, and acts from India, but also to make you very cost competitive. India needs to bring down its credit rate. India needs to bring down its power rates. India needs to ensure that it is able to provide land for manufacturing in one day. Many, many reforms. Much of these reforms now have to be driven by the states. The center has done its job. Make states the champions of your growth. Make cities the champions of your growth. The next part of your growth will come not from center, but from states. You need 12 states to grow at 10% plus per annum for the next 3 decades. That will ensure that India will grow. So we need to create champions out of them. But the good thing is that this budget talks about driving cities, regional growth, provides 5,000 crores for them, and links up, provides 7 high-speed train corridors. All this together will be the key driver of India's growth story in the coming days.
Well, thank you very much, Amitabh Kant, for joining us here on your first reactions. But the one thing that